A routine traffic stop spirals into humiliation when Officer Trask targets a black man in a luxury car. What begins with arrogance slowly peels back layers of tension. But as Trask gets bolder, the man's silence becomes more unsettling. Then just before he leaves, everything flips: license and registration. Unless you people don't carry those. The words slice the warm morning air with a familiar sting. Officer Mark Trask leaned against the hood of his cruiser, boots planted wide, sunglasses reflecting a sleek black sedan parked just ahead. They were on a quiet suburban stretch, no witnesses, just chirping cicadas, a lazy dog behind a fence, and the sun climbing into an open blue sky. Inside the car sat a man in his late 40s, calm, composed, wearing a navy blue tailored suit with a silver tie pin. The car's windows were halfway down, and cool jazz floated faintly into the street. Trask's smirk widened. "You deaf, buddy? Or us used to being disrespectful?" The man said nothing, just reached slowly, deliberately toward the glove compartment. His movements were careful, practiced, not because he feared the gun pointed casually downward by Trask's leg, but because he was used to being watched like this. Trask strutted closer, puffing up his chest. "This your car?" He ran a gloved hand along the side mirror. "'Cause, last time I checked, guys like you don't usually afford something like this unless it's stolen or rented." Still, silence. Then, a small, symbolic action. The man handed over a badge. Black leather, gold seal, Internal Affairs. "Deputy Director." Trask's smirk cracked. "You think a fake badge and a suit makes you somebody?" Now the tone changed. But the man still didn't speak. Trask ripped the ID out of his hands. "Let's run this. Probably bought it online." But the moment he stepped back toward his radio, the man spoke. Low, controlled, final, careful. "Officer, every second you drag this out is a report with your name on it. I suggest you decide who's actually got the problem here." Trask froze. The man's calm had flipped the atmosphere. Suddenly, the street wasn't quiet, it was suffocating. The cicadas were loud. The heat was unbearable. The silence wasn't submission. It was a warning. A shadow moved behind the tinted rear window. Trask's heart skipped. Then, out of nowhere, "Sir, is there a problem?" Another officer pulled up. Younger, nervous, looked between Trask and the man. Trask shoved the ID back. Through the window. "No problem," he muttered. "Just a misunderstanding." But the man took it slow. He reached into his breast pocket, pulled out a notepad, and jotted something down. Trask didn't ask what, didn't dare. The car drove off, tires silent over hot asphalt, and Trask stood there, hands still resting on his holster. Now useless. Because he just realized he might have pulled over the man who decides his future. Someone better tell me what the hell just happened. Trask slammed his locker shut with a bang, making two rookies flinch across the room. He was still sweating. The early stop clawing at his mind like a ghost. His fingers trembled slightly as he unlaced his boots. Dispatch had gone quiet since his call-in. No follow-up. No questions. To quiet. "Everything okay?" asked Officer Jenna Ruiz, leaning on the doorframe. "No," Trask snapped. "I stopped a guy this morning. Something about him felt off. Said he was Internal Affairs. Gave me a badge, name, all of it." Ruiz raised a brow. "Yeah, you serious?" Trask nodded once. "Name." Trask paused. "Didn't catch the last name?" "Something with AD. Might have said he was Deputy Director." Ruiz straightened. "You don't forget a name like that, Mark, especially not his." Trask's stomach dropped. "What do you mean, his?" She took a step closer, voice lower now. "There's a man from Internal Affairs making unannounced rounds. Tall, black, wears suits like he's walking out of a courtroom every morning. I heard he got 3 officers suspended last month for traffic stops unless like yours." Trask's tongue felt like sandpaper. "You think it was him?" "I think." Ruiz tapped her radio. You better check your body cam. Trask froze, then rushed to his terminal. He pulled up the feed. A strange emptiness greeted him. No footage recorded between 7:12 and 7:54 a.m. Error code 47. Impossible, he muttered. I turned it on same as always. Ruiz was watching. You sure about that? It was on. I even heard the beep. His hands were shaking now. This isn't just a glitch, a knock echoed through the hallway. Then a voice, to smooth. For a cop. To direct for a stranger. Officer Trask, is it? Trask turned toward the station door. There he was, standing in tailored silence, holding a manila folder in one hand and a cup of black coffee in the other. Same eyes. Same calm. Same suit. The man from the stop. Trask straightened. Deputy Director. The man stepped inside without waiting for permission. You may call me Mr. Daniels. Ruiz instinctively stood upright. Daniels' presence swallowed the room like the temperature had dropped, like justice had just walked in without knocking. Mind if we speak privately? Daniels said, gesturing toward the interrogation room. Trask didn't answer. His legs moved anyway. Inside the room, Daniels laid down the folder. Inside, still images. One showed Trask leaning against his cruiser, another, Trask holding his gun, a little too close to the window. Another clear as day, his smirk. Where did you get these? Daniels sat, sipped his coffee, and looked him dead in the eye. Did you think we don't run silent audits, Officer Trask? We don't just wait for bad officers to screw up, we record how they do it. Trask's face drained of color. There was no camera. Daniels leaned forward slightly. Wrong again. He tapped the folder. Your cruiser dash cam recorded. Audio. Your partner's unit down the block picked up visual. And your victim, he was a member of my compliance team. Planted to test officer response. Trask blinked. Jaw slack. You what? Daniels folded his arms. You just failed the integrity test, officer. And it was only your first. Silence. You'll be hearing from the oversight board. Daniels continued calmly. And if you decide to lie, erase footage, or manipulate statements, know this. Every step you take is already on record. Then he stood. Trask couldn't breathe. You had one job this morning, Daniels said, his voice now ice. Uphold the badge. Instead, you used it to humiliate, to profile, to threaten. The folder snapped shut like a sentence being passed. And, now, Daniels added, you're going to watch everything you built start to disappear. He left the room without another word. Trask stared at the blank table in front of him. For the first time in his career, the silence wasn't peaceful. It was judgment, and it had just begun. You hear about Trask. The murmur swept through the precinct like a cold wind, brushing past vending machines and locker room doors, into hallways where silence used to mean peace. You got him this morning. Daniels himself showed up. No way. I saw him walk out. Trask looked like he aged 10 years in 5 minutes. By lunchtime, the whispers weren't whispers anymore, they were survival instincts. Nobody wanted to be near Trask, and Trask noticed. He sat alone in the break room, untouched sandwich in front of him, watching his so-called friends pretend he wasn't there a week ago. He ran this squad with chest-out swagger. Now, he was radioactive. His body cam hadn't saved him, his status hadn't protected him. And Daniels wasn't done. Meanwhile, in interview room B, Daniels adjusted his cufflinks and looked across the table at Officer Kenneth Miles, mid-30s, white, nervous. Daniels didn't blink. You've been here 9 years, Officer Miles. Yes, sir. Daniels flipped open a file. Yet in 9 years, you've never once filed a complaint against excessive force, racist conduct, or policy violations. That normal? Miles squirmed. I mind my business. I stay out of trouble. Daniels nodded slowly. See, that's the problem. You think silence keeps you safe, but silence is participation. Miles blinked. Daniels leaned in. I reviewed your body cam logs. You've been present during 3 separate incidents of verbal racial abuse. You said nothing. I didn't. You said nothing, Daniels repeated. And here's the part you're going to hate. Your silence is louder than any slur. Miles swallowed hard. I need names, Daniels said. What? I need names. Officers who do what Trask did. Who stop drivers because of skin tone. Who pull weapons too fast. Who whisper things into radio mix they don't think get recorded. Miles was shaking his head. You don't understand. If I talk, I'm done. These guys, they close ranks, and if you don't talk, Daniels cut in coldly, you are one of them. Miles's jaw tensed. Daniels waited. The silence dragged. Then Miles broke. His voice came out like a whisper scraping through concrete. Peterson, Wallace, Jim Torres. They joke about planting evidence sometimes. I didn't think they were serious, but after Trask, he trailed off. Daniels just nodded. I'll need a full written statement by 6 p.m., he said. You just became part of this investigation. But let me be very clear, this isn't about saving your job. Miles looked up. It's about facing what you've ignored for too long. Back in the bullpen, Daniels' presence shifted everything. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. But his walk, the sound of it made officers straighten up. The folders he carried held truth, and nobody could tell if their names were inside. That night, Daniels returned to his apartment. He took off his tie slowly, like a soldier unstrapping armor. He walked to the window, looking out over the city. It had begun. He wasn't just coming for Trask. He was coming for the system that protected men like him, and he was just getting started. You're overstepping. Captain Roy Harris's voice was calm, but heavy like lead wrapped in velvet. The kind of voice that ended careers behind closed doors. Daniels didn't blink. The office smelled of old leather and authority. Commendations lined the wall. A photo of Harris shaking hands with the mayor sat proudly behind him. Daniels stood at attention across the desk, suit crisp, folder in hand. I've opened 3 internal probes, Harris said, leaning back in his chair. I've followed protocol. Daniels flipped open the folder. No, you haven't. You've buried complaints. You've rerouted reports to your personal inbox. And in Officer Trask's case, you signed off on disciplinary reviews without so much as an interview. Harris narrowed his eyes. You have no idea how hard it is to run this precinct. I do, Daniels replied. I also know what it looks like when a leader lets the rot spread unchecked. Silence filled the room like rising water. Daniels took one step forward. I don't report to you, Captain. And this isn't about one racist stop on the street. It's about a department where no one is afraid of consequences. Harris stood up slowly. You know how many good men you're going to ruin by digging like this. Daniels' stare was steel. They ruined themselves. I'm just bringing the receipts. He placed another folder on the desk. It read, Captain Roy Harris Compliance Review opened. Harris's hand twitched. You're investigating me. No, Daniels said. You're being investigated by the Office of Professional Conduct. I'm delivering the news. You're no longer in charge of internal reviews. Harris's voice dropped to a growl. You're making enemies. Daniels smiled faintly. I don't need friends here. I need the truth. He turned and walked to the door, leaving Harris frozen behind his desk. Just before leaving, Daniels paused, then spoke without turning back. By the time this is over, Captain, they'll know your silence costs more lives than any bullet. And he left. Outside the office, Daniels stepped into the hallway. Every officer nearby pretended to look busy, but they'd heard. The balance of power had shifted. Captain Harris was no longer untouchable, and Daniels, he was the reckoning no one saw coming. Later that evening, Daniels sat in his apartment again, reviewing transcripts. Officer Miles had provided names, more than 3. Over a dozen. Patterns began to form. Stops targeting minorities. Redland neighborhoods flooded with patrols. Complaints closed without investigation. and one signature kept appearing across the reports. Roy Harris. Daniels leaned back. This wasn't just about one precinct. It was a network of silence. And now the system had a crack, and Daniels was bringing the storm through it. The video hit the internet like lightning to dry grass. No watermark, no commentary. Just raw footage. Trask standing tall in front of the black sedan, one hand on his weapon, the other jabbing toward the window. You deaf, buddy, or just used to being disrespectful. The words echoed across millions of screens, paused, replayed, shared. Within an hour, the hashtags trended. Hashtag pulled while black, hashtag Trask exposed, hashtag internal affairs now outside the precinct. The crowd grew. By noon, it stretched down the block. Protest signs waved. Chants rose and fell. Phones were out. Cameras live-streamed every officer walking past. Inside, the atmosphere was radioactive. We're under siege, growled Captain Harris, staring at the coverage on a wall-mounted TV. They want heads. Danielle stood at the back of the room, unmoved. They want justice, he said quietly. The press conference was already scheduled for 4 p.m., and the mayor's office wanted talking points, but the leak had changed the game. This wasn't just a personnel issue anymore. It was national. Daniels retreated to his office, shutting the door against the tension. He played the video again frame by frame. He'd seen worse, heard worse, but the casual cruelty, the comfort Trask had in saying it, that was what made it dangerous, because it meant the department had trained him to feel safe doing it. Soft knock broke his focus. Officer Ruiz stepped in, pale. Sir, you should see this. She held out her phone. A screenshot. Officer Kenneth Miles, face bruised, lying in a hospital bed. Someone jumped him in the parking garage at his apartment. Danielle stood. Fast. Is he conscious? Barely. Said it was 2 men, wore masks, but they told him to keep quiet. Danielle's jaw clenched. They're silencing witnesses. Ruiz nodded grimly. And they're sending a message. An hour later, Danielle stood at the press podium. Flashes exploded. Questions barked. He waited. Let the noise fill the space. Then, slowly, he spoke. The video that was leaked today is real. The behavior shown is not an isolated incident. It is the result of a department that has, for too long, turned a blind eye to its own decay. The crowd hushed. I am not here to protect reputations. I am here to rebuild trust. And that begins with truth. He laid down a copy of the EA report. Effective immediately, Officer Mark Trask is suspended pending termination. Multiple investigations are now open, and anyone caught obstructing justice in any way will be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. A reporter shouted, What about the attack on Officer Miles? Daniels didn't blink. We're not only investigating that attack, we're hunting the men who ordered it. That night, back at home, Daniels stared at the ceiling fan. He knew what came next. Someone would try to dig into his past. They'd call him an outsider. They'd say he was out for revenge. But they were wrong. This wasn't revenge. This was reckoning. And it had just been televised. The envelope was unmarked. No return address. Just a single line written across the top in sharp, black ink. Walk away, or we'll bury you like we buried your brother. Daniels sat motionless at his desk, eyes on the page. His fingers didn't tremble. He didn't blink. He just stared. The hum of the overhead light felt louder, like it was buzzing with memory. The words had hit their mark, because they knew. Not many did. Daniels was 16 when they beat his brother unconscious in front of the community center. His brother Marcus had just finished giving a talk about college prep to a group of younger boys when two off-duty officers pulled him aside in the parking lot. Said he matched a suspect. No explanation, no backup. They shoved him, then punched him, then cuffed him after he hit the ground. Daniels, standing 20 feet away, couldn't move. He remembered the taste of blood in his mouth from biting down, trying not to scream. He remembered Marcus's eyes, confused, hurt, not just from fists, But from betrayal, nobody helped. Not the cameras, not the staff, not the system. Marcus never pressed charges. Said it wouldn't change anything. But that night, Daniels made a promise. He'd become the system they feared, and he'd never blink. Now, decades later, the ghost of that night had arrived in an envelope. They thought it would break him. Instead, it reminded him why he existed. Daniels slid the letter into a plastic sleeve, logged it, and sent it to forensics. Then he did something he rarely did. He picked up the phone and made a personal call. "Detective Mills," he said. "I'm invoking Directive Echo 7. Full protective surveillance. Off book. Got it." "Who's the threat?" Daniels looked at the envelope. "Someone with access to sealed records. Someone close. Understood. And you?" Daniels exhaled. "I'm going to the station." He arrived at midnight. The precinct was quieter now. But word had spread about the leak, the press conference, the hospital attack. Something dark hung in the air. He walked straight to Captain Harris's office. Didn't knock. Harris looked up from a glass of bourbon, burning the midnight oil. Daniels shut the door. "Hard. You leak my sealed family file." Harris raised a brow, but didn't deny it. "I didn't think you'd still be carrying that story like a badge." Daniels stepped forward. "I carry it because it's the reason I'm here, and you just reminded me how deep this rot runs." Harris sipped his drink, smug. "You really think one press conference is going to change this department?" "No," Daniels replied, "but indictments will." He laid down 3 fresh files, one with Trask's name, one with Harris's, and one with 2 masked men now identified from traffic cameras near Officer Miles' apartment. Harris stiffened. "You're bluffing." Daniels smiled coldly. "You're still playing checkers. I've been playing chess since the day your friends put my brother in a coma." Then he leaned in, voice razor sharp. "You've got one shot to cooperate, or you go down with every officer you protected." Harris looked like he'd just seen a ghost, and maybe he had. Because Daniels wasn't a man anymore, he was every consequence the system had ignored. Back at home, Daniels finally allowed himself to sit down. He stared out the window, the night bleeding into the glass like ink. They thought fear would stop him, but all they'd done was wake the version of him that didn't need mercy anymore. The message came through a secure channel. Subject: "I know where the files are. We need to talk." Daniels stared at the screen. He'd set up that encrypted line months ago. It had never been used. Until now. He replied. Location. Time of 5 seconds later. Rooftop. Parking deck. See midnight. Come alone. Daniels arrived under the amber glow of city lights. The wind carried the scent of exhaust and rain on concrete. He scanned the rooftop, empty except for one figure leaning against a rusting HVAC unit. She turned as he approached. "Officer Jenna Ruiz, you sent the message?" Daniels asked. Ruiz nodded. "Couldn't let it go anymore?" Daniels watched her carefully. "Why now?" She folded her arms. "Because I joined this force to protect people. Not to protect people from us, and watching Miles get jumped for." Speaking out, she paused, her voice cracking. "That made me sick." Danielle stepped closer. "What do you have?" She pulled out a small flash drive, hidden folder on the department's restricted access server. Confidential internal briefings, audio recordings, memo trails. All approved by Captain Harris. Daniels took it. Ruiz wasn't done. "There's more." Patrol orders changed last summer. Quietly, target zones were shifted toward minority neighborhoods. High-risk zones, they called them, but we knew what it meant. Profiling through policy. Daniels muttered. Ruiz nodded. "I went to the union once. Asked why we were only being told to monitor black youth at the rec center and not the white kids skateboarding near City Hall. What did they say?" She hesitated. "Then, if you don't like the pattern, maybe you're the problem." Daniels clenched his jaw. Ruiz stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Harris isn't the top of this chain, Daniels. He answers to someone in city oversight, a man named Trent Duvall. He's the one who ordered the data be deleted after every non-event stop. Danielle's eyes narrowed. That's a felony. Ruiz looked around nervously. You didn't hear it from me, but if you go after Harris, take Duvall too. Otherwise, the system grows a new head. Danielle slid the flash drive into his jacket. You just made yourself a target. I know. She turned to leave. Danielle stopped her. Why risk this? Ruiz looked back. Eyes tired but firm, because my nephew's 12. And I don't want him growing up afraid of the badge I wear. She vanished down the stairwell, footsteps fading. Back at his apartment, Daniels plugged in the drive. Files, unfolded like rotting floorboards, pulled up one by one. Email chains from Harris to Duvall, handled the EA concern. No evidence remains. Patrol shift maps color-coded by race density. Audio logs of officers joking about scaring the black off them. A deleted complaint from a civilian filed the morning after the incident with Marcus Daniels. Years ago. His fingers hovered over the mouse. They weren't just ignoring the rot. They'd institutionalized it. Daniels made a decision. He picked up his phone. Detective Mills, bring your team. No delays. We're moving tonight. What's the target? Daniels stared at the screen. City Hall, at 3:14 a.m. Internal Affairs agents raided a private office buried inside the city oversight building. Hard drives were taken. Servers cloned. By morning, 3 names were sealed in an arrest warrant. Mark Trask. Roy Harris, Trent Duvall, the 3 pillars, all about to fall. The city was on fire metaphorically, and nearly literally. News headlines ran nonstop loops of the footage. Arrests, perp walks, protesters. Danielle's face flashed beside words like hero and disruptor. But behind those headlines, City Hall was in free fall. That's why he got the call. The mayor wants to see you. Now, the office was sleek, designed for optics more than function. Books lined the shelves, unread. Framed awards from donors filled the walls. A view of the skyline stretched out behind the glass desk like a stage. Mayor Patricia Langley stood waiting, mid-50s. Sharp suit, sharper tongue. She didn't smile when Daniels entered. You certainly made waves, she said. Daniels didn't sit. I'm not here for congratulations. Langley clasped her hands, walking around the desk. No, you're here because this thing is bigger than you think. The footage, the charges it triggered federal inquiries. I've got Washington breathing down my neck, and my approval rating sinking by the hour. Daniels said nothing. Langley stepped closer. You're principled. I respect that, but principles don't govern cities. Strategy does. He raised an eyebrow. I want to offer you something, she continued. A position, Senior Special Advisor on Police Accountability. You'd work directly under my office, help guide policy reform. Publicly, it shows we're listening. Internally, it gives you a seat at the real table. Daniels crossed his arms, and, in return, she paused. You let the heat cool. Let the cases take their course. Quietly retire the more explosive evidence. We can't have half the council indicted. The city won't survive the scandal. There it was. The deal. Power in exchange for silence. Daniels stepped forward until he was just a breath away from her. He lowered his voice. You think this is about bad PR? Langley's smile faltered. I've read the reports, he said. Trask didn't just profile drivers, he threatened them. Harris silenced victims. Duvall rewrote policy to target civilians by race. And you want me to make that palatable to the press? Langley didn't respond. Daniels turned to the window. Let me tell you something, Madam Mayor. When I was 15, my brother was beaten within inches of his life. The system called it a misunderstanding. He looked back at her. I'm not here to manage misunderstanding. I'm here to end it. Langley's jaw tensed. You'd rather burn the whole department to the ground. If that's what it takes to rebuild it, right, then yes. Silence stretched like wire between them. Daniels moved to the door. You can keep your offer. Just before exiting, he added, you want a strategy. Here's one. Tell the truth, stand with us, or step aside when the people come through that door. And then he left. Outside, reporters swarmed, but Daniels kept walking. He passed murals painted on city walls, protesters singing, candlelight vigils at the courthouse steps. He saw something new. Not just pain, not just outrage. But belief that someone was finally doing something, and not backing down. Back at HQ, Officer Ruiz met him at the door. They're planning a press event tomorrow. Big one. For what? She grinned faintly. To announce the new interim police chief. Daniels blinked. Then narrowed his eyes. Who? Ruiz just nodded toward the conference room. Inside, his name was on the folder at the head of the table. Rain fell hard downtown. Protesters moved like a wave, chanting, marching, unified under black umbrellas and soaked banners. At the center of it all, City Plaza. And surrounding them on all sides, Daniels' officers. His officers now. Gas is prepped, one commander reported, tight-lipped, shields in place. Standing by, Daniels stood at the heart of the command center, staring at the drone feed on the wall. The mayor was the speaker. You need to clear the square, Langley barked. Property being damaged, stores are shutting down, people are scared. This is not a damn sit-in anymore. Daniels didn't answer right away, because he saw it. Amid the yelling, the tension, the cracked glass and overturned trash cans, there was something familiar. A father holding his young son's hand, a woman with a megaphone quoting the Bill of Rights. An elderly black veteran in his Sunday suit standing perfectly still. It wasn't chaos. It was painful, and it was a test. Permission to deploy? Asked another officer beside him. Daniels turned to the mic. He hit the switch so everyone on the squad's frequency could hear. Stand down. I repeat. All officers hold position. No tear gas, no batons. No escalation unless met with direct violence. Record everything. Assist civilians. Protect the crowd. Don't provoke it. A long silence. Then static. Then, copy that, Chief. Outside, tension thickened. Some officers hesitated. Shields raised halfway. Protesters chanted louder. Suddenly a bottle flew, smashed near the feet of the line. Another a brick. Some protesters screamed, backing away. Others surged forward in anger. An officer reached for his gas canister, but Daniel's voice rang out again. Body cam check. All of you are being watched. And if one of you throws first, you'll answer me personally? He stepped outside. Rain soaked through his shirt. Flashes lit up. The crowd saw him walking without armor, without shield, without a weapon. People shouted. Then fell silent. Daniels walked to the center of the square, faced the crowd. Faced the line, raised one hand. And spoke. This is not war. This is reckoning, and you have a right to be angry. But I swear on everything I carry, we will not be your enemy tonight. The crowd buzzed. Murmurs rolled, but then someone in the back started to chant. We see you. Another voice joined. Then a dozen. We see you. We see you. Daniel stood still. No tear gas was fired. No nightstick swung. And in that soaked, defiant silence, the city exhaled. Later that night, Daniels walked into his office. He sat heavily. He had disobeyed the mayor, risked officer backlash, risked everything, but he had drawn the line, and for once, that line hadn't been written in fear. It had been written in choice. Outside the precinct, Ruiz waited. You did it, she said softly. Daniels looked out the window. No, he replied. We did. The courtroom was packed. Media, families, officers, some still in uniform, others stripped of it. Daniels sat in the second row. He didn't testify today. He didn't have to. His work was already woven into every page of evidence stacked on the judge's bench. One by one, the verdicts rang out. Mark Trask, guilty on all counts. Roy Harris, guilty of obstruction, misconduct in public office. Trent Duvall, convicted for conspiracy to falsify data and racial profiling policy manipulation. Gasps, cries, Some cheers, a few fists clenched in quiet triumph, but Dan yells. He just closed his eyes. It was done. The rot had been exposed. The system had seen itself, ugly, twisted, and unhidden. Weeks later, Daniel stood on the steps of the courthouse, in front of a podium. Press swarmed. He wore his dress uniform not out of pride, but closure. This isn't about revenge, he said into the microphones. This is about responsibility, about reminding the badge of its meaning. It's about those who are silenced, now heard. He looked out over the crowd. Accountability is not the end. It's the beginning. Inside the precinct, Officer Ruiz was pinning her new promotion badge onto her chest. Are you ready for the desk? Daniels teased as he entered. She laughed. Are you kidding? I want your job. You already got it, he said, handing her a sealed folder. Effective next week. I'm stepping down. Her smile faded. You're leaving? He nodded. Not running. Just making space. Real change ain't one man with a badge. It's many, walking in the same direction. He reached into his pocket, pulled out an old, worn photograph. His brother Marcus back in the day. Smiling, holding up a college acceptance letter, Daniels placed it in her hand. He's why I started. You're why I can't stop. She blinked away tears. I won't let you down, she said. I know, Daniels replied. The next morning, Daniels walked into City Plaza. No cameras. No press. Just a coffee in hand and a light breeze against his face. He sat on the bench where it all began, watched as kids played nearby. One of them fell. Scraped a knee. A cop jogging stopped immediately, crouched, helped the child up, and offered a bandage. The kid smiled. No fear. No flinch. Daniels watched quietly. That's what the badge was supposed to be. He stood, turned toward the street, and started walking. No entourage. No sound. Just the quiet legacy of someone who never raised his voice, because his truth was louder than any system built to silence him.